What's going on? This is My Life in the Shop. I'm your host, Donald Washington. Now, the guy that you're seeing right here is Lieutenant Ryan Graves. He's a Navy pilot based out of Jacksonville, Florida. He's a 10-year vet. The footage that you're seeing is out of January 20th, 2015. This is a UFO, aka unknown aerial phenomenon, as they call it now. He's also saying that it was spinning like a top, moving against the wind, no visible engine or propulsion. It didn't show up on infrared or any exhaust fumes. Now, this craft is also flew at 30,000 feet and at hypersonic speeds that unknown to me.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is an LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Echo 6-1 Tango Roger, Roger. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get... Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
Now, this footage is very similar to the footage that the Pentagon released a few years back. Now, the Pentagon released footage off the coast of San Diego, footage that was taken in 2004. This is the Pentagon official. Take a look at this footage here.
I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological. Hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly in defying the laws of aerodynamics. It's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar returns. It's also people like radar operators and air traffic controllers. So I think the discussion should be maybe a little bit broader than that. I think people are focusing just on two videos coming from a set of F-18s when really it's a lot more than that.
What would you estimate the speed?
Oh, well above supersonic. It like a bullet out of a gun, it took off.
So from what you know about aerodynamics, mechanics, physics, should this be possible, what you saw?
Not with the technology that we have today. Not at all.
Line, what do you think this was?
I believe, as do the other folks that were on the flight that when we visually saw it, that it was something not from this world.
Now, that was a Navy pilot and a Pentagon official that you can see that said that this thing had no obvious propulsion, moved at G-sonic speeds that's unknown to man. This craft is definitely not in our inventory or anybody else's inventory. This thing is definitely an unknown phenomenon. Now, I'm gonna bring you guys to footage of Bob Lazar. He's a whistleblower. He's a scientist out of military base S4, which is south of Area 51. He said that's why that base was created, to back engineer extraterrestrial craft. Now, I want you guys to listen to how Bob Lazar say the craft operate, how they're able to disappear, and how they're able to fly at such velocities and flip over and change direction. Take a look at Bob Lazar.
I had to hang upside down in there to see the lower level, essentially. And there were three large gravity amplifiers. These devices looked like about a 2-foot diameter, 4-foot long piece of pipe hanging by a smaller piece of pipe from the level above, and they can be independently positioned. And that's what emits the gravitational waves that propel the craft.
How does the craft achieve lift?
It produces a gravity wave which is similar to the gravity wave that the Earth produces. However, the craft phase shifts the wave. In other words, it turns the wave not really in an opposite polarity, but something to that effect, where it will work against the natural gravity wave of the Earth, and it produces a lift in that effect.
Is there any internal protection for the crew? Does the craft generate a gravitational field inside the craft itself?
Well, the craft generates its own gravitational field. Being inside that field essentially doesn't shield you, but essentially you're in, and this is a terrible way to say it, almost in a different realm, because you're now influenced only by that gravitational field. For instance, people wonder how a craft like this can make a turn at such high speed, a 90-degree turn, when they would imagine people slamming up against the wall or something to that effect. Well, that really wouldn't happen. Inertia would have no effect. You're in a distortion, and don't forget that gravity distorts time and space, so really nothing is going to influence you while you're in there. The craft can operate on a single one, can lift off the ground. The way in which it's propelled are two different ways. There's what they call Omicron configuration, where the craft is using one generator, or Delta configuration, where it's utilizing all three. Delta configuration would be for space travel. Essentially, the craft will tilt up on its side, as opposed to a science fiction movie where you see a flying saucer moving around. The craft will tilt up on its side, focus the three gravity generators to a single point, and move through space that way. Moving around the source of gravity is a problem to a disk because it's interference, essentially. So what they do is they work with that interference to their benefit. They'll use one gravity generator to lift the craft off the ground. And as opposed to what we're used to, for instance, a plane, once it's in the air, we envision thrust or some force coming out the back of it to push it forward. The crafts work completely opposite of that. What they do is once they're hovering in the air, they'll swing the two remaining gravity generators up in front of them and create a distortion, essentially a downhill, and the craft rolls downhill for infinity. It's always chasing a little distortion.
Now, all of the Navy pilots are all saying the exact same thing, that these crafts also disappear at times. One of the pilots said that he went underneath the craft and should have been able to see it in his helmet cam, and it wasn't there, and that these objects suddenly disappear at times. I want you guys to see what Bob Lazar says on why and how the craft disappear. Take a look at this.
Because it produces a gravitational field, I wouldn't say the craft is invisible during the day. However, if you're under the craft, because of the way the gravity is being used, gravity bends time and space, and it bends light. If you are looking underneath the craft or from certain vantage points, you will actually see what's above the craft. It's really a trick of the way light bends under the influence of gravity. For instance, we can see stars that are behind the sun, that are blocked from our view by the sun. The reason we can see them is because the sun is a tremendous gravitational field, and it's bending the light around it where we can see the star. Space-time.
I asked you point blank the question, do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
That these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory, nor in any foreign inventory that we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
Is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.